So we have Alessandra Chervi from Barilla Group and Eric Giordano from Next Atlas. My God. And they will share how Barilla harnesses ChefAtlas's generative culinary intelligence to unlock powerful industry insights. One of them is a supermarket stalker. The other one has a little trouble figuring out colors. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Ipsita. Well, actually, when you asked about the fun fact, I wanted to say that I know by heart more than 150 songs of Bruce Springsteen, but then the colorblind thing was more interesting because I have to justify this color so bold. So yeah, this is the reason why I selected this one.
All right, so our goal, chefs. How do we reach them? How do we talk to them? If you were to just give them a survey, they just stir fry it and serve it back to you. But give them a kitchen, look at what they do, listen to the conversations that are happening, and they will tell you much more. And this is why it matters in food service, because chefs are the one creating the trends. They're not listening to consumers. They do not listen to many of our campaigns, but they follow each other. And this is where innovation starts. From kitchen to kitchen, from plate to plate. And this is why it was important for us to know that to build that future of food, we need to know what language chefs are speaking. But chefs do not let anyone in. They're a bit of a cliquey group. They are innovators for sure, but they also have their own language, their own way of speaking, their own codes. So we couldn't just knock at their door. We needed to be there. So from a research perspective, what was our challenge? The challenge was that if we were going with a more of a traditional approach, surely we would have still seen really important insights and interesting one to use. But the reality is that chefs are creative people. They are experimenting. They're never standing still. They're always doing something. So we needed to capture this dynamic community and also in the methodology that we were looking for.
Yeah, and I have to say, from the side of the solution provider, that the challenge is bigger because not only it's a matter of understanding something that is evolving, but it's also a matter of understanding something that cannot be structured in structured data and structured analysis as these ones. When you think about a conversation as the one in this Instagram post, there is a lot of meaning inside that you cannot just simply put into a statistic. So it's a combination of unstructured and structured data. You're asking yourself, is this good old social listening? Yes, it is. But the point is that in the last few years, as you know, we've been doing social listening for a few years as a company, as an industry, of course. But what happened in the last few years is that it has become way easier to remove all the noise that, of course, is really present in social media. So I'm speaking about sponsored posts that you cannot look at if you're looking for something that is a bit more genuine and authentic as the insights that are needed by Barilla. Or spam posts, so people that are, and profiles that are speaking always about the same thing, maybe because they are obsessed, maybe because they have a specific interest in that. Not only, thanks to AI in particular, I have to say, and generative AI, and this is really given a boost. It's easier nowadays to take a profile, also to take a list of posts and extract and infer profession, location, activity, many other features of the profile that we are looking at. So, while practicing social listening today, I already anticipated something, but even if we are not naive in thinking that in social media all the people express themselves in the most genuine way. But still we know that social media are a major arena for exchange about opinions, ideas, needs. Also, we know that, as we were saying, AI-powered tools turn nowadays conversation in an easier way into something that can be turned into a predictive insight, into an information that can reach the market in a very precise way. And this information, in many cases, can be prediction. So if you're looking at the right people, at the right profiles, it becomes possible to detect cultural shifts and emerging trends before they reach the mainstream. This is well, maybe a silly example, but it's quite clear because, Labubu was not existing a couple of years ago. And then at a certain point in Nextatlas, we saw that there was a curve, a little spike that was emerging with this word that we didn't know, so it was really unknown also to us. And if you compare the moment in which something like this happens in Google Trends, that of course is looking at searches, so it's way more general than what we look in Nextatlas, you see that the same spike happens, but weeks later. So it's important to have this level of anticipation and this level of know-how, and social media are still a space where you can find this type of information. So in this specific case, what we did for Barilla, for the request regarding coming back to chefs, what we did is a process. This is actually a slide that my colleagues from the Insight team, the data science, don't like because it's oversimplifying, but it's to make it simple. I mean, 3 steps, and 4th is the analysis. Starting from seeds, so food professionals, blog, magazines, communities, partly detected by hand, partly just validated, partly sourced with automated ways. But there's quite an important control that we do in this stage. Second stage is more automated because there are a lot of profiles that are somehow connected to these seeds. So it can be profiles that maybe are followed by, are mentioned by, or are mentioning other profiles. Of course, here we have noise because they are not all meaningful, they are not relevant for the analysis that we want to do. And this is why, in the first step, we filter out and we leave only active users, food professionals, so the ones that are defining themselves as food professionals, or that we infer are food professionals by looking at the content that they publish, and localized in specific countries. And this is the basis of the analysis, and I believe it's quite important because in many, many occasions in these 2 days we are speaking about trust. So trust, particularly when you have data that afterwards is ingested by AI, it's important understanding where information is coming from, and this is how we control it. So, as we were saying, unstructured and structured data. This is an example of a very long conversation in a forum that is dedicated only to chefs, only to food professionals. They are speaking about knives in this case, and they are really speaking a lot and going really in depth. So there's something here, there's a value that we believe goes way beyond the statistic that you can extract from them. So this is something that you can learn by looking bottom up, simply without any type of knowledge what they are saying. And this is the first information that we get. Second type of information that we get is an information that is more structured, that we can, let's say, put into a framework, a taxonomy, that speaks about food, of course. So in this case, we have some example related to ingredients, but we are speaking about more than 25,000 interconnected nodes. And they are continuously refined, because if a food labubu tomorrow emerges, we want to have it in this taxonomy. By the way, this taxonomy is not only focusing on ingredients and product, but is looking really at food at 360 degrees. So culinary practices, diets, food occasions, and much more. So the result of this analysis is an agent that we call the ChefAtlas, which is a variant of our name in Nextatlas. That, as you can see, takes the information from all this listening and then structures it into an answer that is based on statistic, on posts, and business cases. And this is how it looks. So we can say that this tool has a double-sided result, because on one hand, we have, it's a discovery tool. You discover thing, and this type of statistic is an example of something that you can discover. So just by listening what these food professionals are saying, you discover emerging trends. But on the other end, it's also an agent. So it's something that allows the user, so the researcher, to take this information that has been analyzed and turn it into something that is meaningful for a specific purpose.
So this allowed us to be less reactive and much more proactive. It allowed us to spot the trends before it even hit the marketplace, because we are looking at what chefs are experimenting with at the moment. And this not only made things, of course, faster, as we all want things now, but also more strategic relevant for all of our stakeholders who could access the tool. So let's see a couple of applications of how we use some of the insights that were uncovered through this. First and foremost, product innovation. Looking through ChefAtlas, we identified some new pasta shapes and formats for our premium range, which is a bronze die range. Now, let me interrupt a little bit and give you a little bit of pasta nerd lecture of what is bronze die, and let you salivate in a little bit. It's almost lunchtime. You know pasta, you all know pasta, I hope so. List. A bronze die is a dough that is pushed through an extruder that is made of bronze. This allows the pasta to have a rough texture, and this rough texture allows the pasta to capture that sauce. This means that your experience is much more fuller, it's much more indulgent, and I hope you're hungry now. I'm not sure if we're gonna have bronze die pasta today, but if not, please, I really encourage you to have that experience. Now, I cannot tell you which product it is, because this is gonna come up next year, early next year, and I think the team is gonna be very angry at me if I ruin the surprise. So I'm just gonna let you guess which one it could be. But this was definitely one of the first applications of some of the insights that we could uncover. But another thing that was really important is that this allowed a lot of our stakeholders, especially those who interact with customers, to have conversations that were relevant and resonated with the chefs. And it's not just about resonating. This means building credibility when you talk to your customers. So this definitely helped them in building those conversations. But in other ways, if we move back to online, it also helped us building more of that editorial content. So finding topics that are relevant for this community and not just maybe duplicating from things that we could find on consumers or TikTok trends, where definitely vodka pasta was a trend for quite a while, but for chefs, they moved somewhere else. But besides these applications, what we found that we think was the most valuable thing was that this tool, this solution, this methodology, it was built for food service, for B2B. But the reality was that the insights at the back of it was much more valuable as well to apply it to consumers, because chefs follow chefs, consumers follow chefs as well. So all of those insights were particularly relevant also for our consumer projects, and also for our own chefs that had the access to the whole community and understanding what's going on around different corners of the world and different community chefs around the world. And nonetheless, also research and development. Chefs can be sometimes a bit technical, and this is a technicality that definitely research and development teams can understand and utilize to also improve the product, or thinking about new solutions, or approaching new ways of solving a need from these communities.
Yeah, and these results, of course, are the result of a specific application. So it's a B2B application, it's in food. But there are many other results that can emerge from this type of methodology, and that we are already applying with Barilla and with other clients. So within the food industry, what we are already doing is finding a lot of other type of applications, such as, for example, ranking dishes, ranking cuisines. So it's really product features. but also understanding specific target audiences, so when it goes more towards the side of communication, and maybe the discovery of insight that can be used in innovation, and competitor intelligence, of course, also what's going on in the market. And the same approach can be used, and we are using it with quite a good success in other industries, such as beauty, fashion, healthcare, automotive. So wherever there is a lot of conversation that can be gathered and that can be analyzed in this structured way. As a final note, we're speaking a lot about agents in these 2 days, and some, by the way, some of the intervention were really enlightened in this sense. And I would take as a reference also something that said yesterday Fernando Angulo, that was comparing 2 different ways that we have of reasoning when thinking about research. So asking questions in a natural way compared with a research that is based on keywords. So it was, in this case, the Google research. And we are facing something similar also for our solution, because of course we started up a few years ago building beautiful dashboards. And these dashboards are still here, but we are going beyond dashboards. So there's something that is somehow, let's say, close to dashboard, but as a by-result of dashboards. Because all these agents that dedicated to specific occasion that we are developing nowadays are based on the very same analysis, so on the very same analysis that allows to find and detect trends before they become mainstream. But then the specific application can be application, for example, for a single business unit, for a single use. So we really believe that dashboard and agents can coexist, of course, with different type of use and depending on the scope of the research. And finally, there's a lot of automation in what we are doing, but we are not missing, of course, the human side. The human side, because this is really a human-in-the-loop approach, meaning that there are many different points in which there are moments of validation and reckoning and understanding. And we believe that in this circle, in this process, human is both at the beginning and at the end to give something meaningful and to lead to something that is maybe close to what yesterday was defined as a purpose-driven approach to research. And we hope with this presentation that we have stimulated your appetite in general, but also for insight and for questions, and we will be happy to answer if you have any. Thank you.
It's a follow-up question, perhaps, that might be helpful to hear from the group here. Related to synthetic data, I think about B2B research in particular quite a lot. I think about the importance of foresight and forward-looking, because the data that sits today, that's in the hands of a business decision maker, isn't the data that they're necessarily looking at to make business decisions for the future. So how do we, as an industry, look at synthetic data, or perhaps any other, AI tool that can enable foresight for the future for B2B? So I'll leave that open to anyone that might want to share their thoughts.
If I can add one thing related to foresight, there's a great difference when you analyze and you try to imagine what will be the far future if compared with the near future. So, for example, with all the analysis that we do, it's quite easy in a way to have statistics that are somehow reliable and that can be matched and compared with what happens actually in the market and say in the next 6 months, 12 months, these things will occur. Of course, if you are asking for, let's say, something magical that through the use of AI tells you what will be the scenarios for the next years, you can use just the AI. And I really agree with what you were saying before related to processes. And foresight is a process and has meaning only if it's made by a certain community and certain users for a certain purpose. So what you can do with AI in foresight is making faster some of the steps of the process. But in all the steps, there has to be a decision and something that comes to real people that are creating hypotheses and then debating these hypotheses. And maybe AI can help you to shape these hypotheses, but then the choice and the implication will be made only by a group of people. So this is the interaction between the two.
I would also like to challenge that we're all using AI today in everyday activities. How long until we are going to agree with whatever it says and our thoughts are aligned with what AI says today? We're already seeing in a few presentations the sameness of ideas, of creativity. We're going to reach that thought as well. So also from a synthetic data, everything that you shared today is super interesting. I'd be really interested to see next year if this is the same results or if it's going to get better, because it's not just AI adapting to us, but we are adapting to AI as well.